All right, let's get into it. So for our first story, we have the news, kind of an update, so to speak, on Twitter. And the first kind of article that I brought up was from I don't know if it's Reuters or Reuters. I always pronounce it wrong. Whichever one is the right one, default to that. And I apologize for whatever one is the wrong one. But so there's been a little bit of a kerfuffle, and I've been trying to get that word into our podcast for a while. Over a Twitter executive who's come forward as a whistleblower and aired some of Twitter's dirty laundry, and done so in a way and at a time that might actually help Elon Musk win his legal win his legal battle against Twitter, I should say. So the headline reads: Twitter staff exodus accelerates amid Musk battle, whistleblower complaint. So there's been a whistleblower who's come forward, and this article is honing in on the fact that Twitter staff is now exiting en masse. And it has this feeling, the headline has this kind of sense of like this is a sinking ship and everybody's trying to get off of it because the whistleblower revealed or is making claims that a lot of people suspected, particularly those right of center, about the nature of Twitter censorship, and even went so far as to make claims or accusations or allegations, let's say, that there may be, and this may goes too far because it doesn't seem to have any, there doesn't seem to be any incontrovertible proof yet, but that there may be foreign spies working for Twitter. um, I think it's interesting that specifically the employee attrition is currently 18.3%. Twitter execs told staff during a company-wide meeting. And that was so before Musk made his $44 billion offer to buy the company, attrition hovered between 14% and 16%, which was consistent with competitors. So there's been an increase in the attrition rate of employees. So that's what's being cited as support, that people are leaving en masse. And there may be various different reasons. It may not just be because the whistleblower came forward and like it's like Twitter's caught with their pants down. It may just be that this makes it more likely for Twitter to be passed on to the hands of Elon Musk, and a lot of people maybe don't want that. So it's an interesting thing. It's an ongoing and developing story. There's a lot to it, but just kind of like overall, I'm wondering kind of where you stand on the story, Ibrahima.
Yeah. So as far as this goes, there have been, Elon Musk has made about the number of, and this is something that was kind of this as complete folly. His former blatantly, went out and said that, hey, we don't really have a way to track that. Like, we're not entirely sure what's going on here. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of employees who have complete access to source code, and this is something that's perhaps not the best for ensuring security on such a network. There there are things that can be altered that pretty much a lot of employees have access to, who are not really high ranking members or people who have been vetted to be given that sort of control. And that to me is something that was it was something that people have been talking about even before Elon Musk came along and said it. And to have someone finally even come out and say it this is extremely interesting. And actually, I believe Elon Musk is subpoenaing Jack Dorsey, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah, so that's going to be a very interesting testimony here, because they will definitely ask him about this, and I'd like to know exactly whether or not they have a handle on this or not.
Interesting. Well, let me bring up this. So this is a corollary to the story from Yahoo Finance. The headline reads: Ex Twitter security chief's whistleblower complaint is a godsend for Elon Musk. It goes on to say, Twitter's ex security chief has filed a whistleblower complaint that claims that, if proven true, with claims that, if proven true, could make it easier for Elon Musk to walk away from his $44 billion deal to buy the social media company. So I want to make a quick correction. I said earlier that that this whole kerfuffle might make it more likely that Elon Musk acquires Twitter. I think actually the most likely thing is that Elon Musk walks away from the deal, which devalues Twitter because it was, in the minds of some financial experts, overvalued in the first place, therefore making it less profitable, and then all of the bad stuff that comes with that. So I think that's actually the most likely outcome of this. Um, and then maybe after that, subsequent to that, Elon Musk might be able to acquire it for a lot less. That's still undetermined. Um, the article moves on to say that Peter Mudge Zatko, a widely respected hacker who was fired in January, sent a 200-page complaint to federal officials accusing Twitter's top executives of violating laws and regulations by covering up lax security and eschewing resources to fully understand its prevalence of fake accounts. The issue of fake accounts plays a central role in the legal battle between Musk and Twitter, which is suing him in an attempt to force him to go through with the deal. The whistleblower claims regarding fake accounts present a considerable tide change in the lawsuit, set for trial in Delaware Chancery Court beginning October 17th. Prior to the claims, some legal experts had predicted that the seller-friendly merger agreement would tip the case in Twitter's favor, with Delaware's chancellor ordering Musk to go through with the deal. This changes everything, quote unquote. University of Iowa law professor Robert Miller said about the claims, quote, "This is like a godsend for Musk. The whistleblower's complaints, if true, are exactly what Musk needs to get out of the deal. I mean, tailor-made. And quote unquote, timing is amazing." Now, if we're putting our conspiracy theory hats on, the timing of this might seem a little fishy to some, and it might suggest that the whistleblower's claims might not be as accurate or true as the person making the claims is making them out to be. However, sometimes bad news is just done with bad timing. Just because the timing is unfortunate for the side that you're rooting for doesn't necessarily mean it's a conspiracy, or doesn't necessarily mean that it's fraudulent. Uh, uh, and we can do the same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. uh, Turns out that stuff was actually legitimate, even though people at first were dismissing it as mere Russian disinformation, which is solely intended to sway the outcome of the 2020 election. Which at the time was impending. It hadn't happened yet, but just because the timing is bad for a particular candidate doesn't mean that the accusations or allegations entailed are false. And it turns out there was a lot to it. So much to it, in fact, that it's actually kind of become a kind of second level scandal that nothing's being done about it. Yet the former president is having his house raided in Mar-a-Lago. At least that's what people right of center would be complaining, and they have been complaining about it for a while. So, any thoughts on any of those things that I just said?
Yeah. So as far as the Twitter lawsuit, again, I think that this may have been something that they may have been aware of prior, at least earlier than when it's been released, and
Uh-huh.
just kind of waited for the right time to do so. But we won't know anything for a while, I guess. But as far as the continuous pattern of one side having such grave issues being just like essentially swept under the rug, and in very politically convenient ways, something that I think it goes on conspiracy at this point. It's like it's one thing if you see what's it called, one correlating factor. It's another if you see two or three correlating. At a certain point, you have to ask yourself: is like what is it's like Occam's razor? Is it more simple to assume that this is true than it would be to assume that, well, all of these things, all these factors are all coincidental? At a certain point, you have to go like, well, hey, this answer actually might be more likely because it's a simpler one. Um, and it's just like
So I
things like, sorry, what?
sorry, I just wanted to let everybody know I dropped out for a second. I heard the Occam's razor part moving forward, and I got the gist of what you're saying, but I
Okay,
didn't want to
okay.
cut you off. But go ahead and finish your thought. Then I'm gonna ask you a question. Then we're gonna move on to the next story.
Gotcha. Yeah, just real quick. And not to get off topic too far here. It's like the Mar-a-Lago raid versus what's it called? the Ashley Biden journal. It's like
Diary
people got
or the Hunter Biden
raided
laptop.
for having it. Yeah, well, yeah, and the Hunter Biden laptop. Like people were raided for having it, having not committed a crime. It's like whose side are you on here? Like, and Trump's Mar-a-Lago raid, they had gotten documents from him probably, I believe, like in June, and they were it was a voluntary exchange. And 2 months later, they have to raid him instead of doing it again. So like these are, it's just it raises so many questions to say the least.
Well, I mean, according to the wisdom of the woke, Joe Biden and his family are not existential threats to our democracy, but the orange man is forever and always and in all respects bad. So clearly that justifies a difference in treatment, does it not?
I mean, listen, if these are your your axioms, I guess, I guess,
The
but
woke are
it
never
kind of
wrong about anything. We know
yeah,
this.
but it's slightly contradictory to a lot of other things that they say, But that's neither here nor there. Like for example, I don't know if you saw Sam Harris talk about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah, I did.
Dude, that
Yeah.
set me, man. That set like,
Sam Harris.
oh my
Yeah.
god,
He was
the
like, Trump University is the worst thing ever. I'm like, what? That's not
what
quite
are
what he
you
said.
talking about, man?
Trump, he said that whatever was with that laptop doesn't even compare to Trump University or something to that effect. Yeah, I saw it. And then he had to kind of backtrack it. It was weird. It was a tacit admission that he was willing to justify letting slide various forms of corruption that are attributable to not only Hunter Biden but also his dad, to the extent that his dad was involved in uh, doing shady dealings in other countries and covering up for his son for political reasons, in contravention of the law, even particularly in his official capacity as vice president. Um, Influence peddling, that kind of thing. Those are all the kinds of. I mean, and then we have him on tape admitting he basically to doing the very thing that Trump got impeached for the first time.
Mhm.
So from somebody who's going to sit back and be objective and is not like somebody like me who's not really that gung ho about Democrats or Republicans, um, like if like for me, I value consistency, and
Mhm.
opinions or on this kind of thing would be more respectable generally if they were consistent. And so if you're not willing to treat your allies or the people you agree with the exact same way as the people you disagree with, then I can't respect your perspective
Mhm.
because it's undermined by your unwillingness to be fair and sensible. And if your bias is making you demonize everybody who disagrees with you as somehow the way worse than everybody who agrees with you, even though they do exactly the same thing, but from their perspective or from their political side or whatever, then like yeah, you've lost it in terms of your objectivity. And if you demonize objectivity itself as white supremacist, then I really don't respect you. So that's why me and the woke don't get along. That's it. I do want to move on, but I want to give you one quick question. What do you think? What are you hoping for in terms of the outcome of the Twitter kerfuffle or debacle?
I mean, it seems like Elon Musk is trying to get out of this one. Personally, I was very much excited for the change in management, just because of the effect it would have on the sort of discourses that be had on Twitter. It's just to me, it's become so ridiculous how easily you can be banned for saying things that are provable and true on Twitter. Or if anything, not even we don't even have to go through provable statements. Um, as far as like your ability to even be wrong, like how about I have an opinion? It might be wrong, but I want to put it out there. That's not really even possible if you have the quote unquote wrong opinion. And it's like
Okay, so
that to
now,
me
okay,
is
you see, you done opened up a whole can of worms, and I was about to move
I,
on, but nope, I'm not gonna do it. So I slightly disagree with you.
hmm
uh, I do think that being heavy-handed with censorship has its own set of problems, and particularly, it could have its own set of problems. It contributes to the dysfunction, the dysfunction with which, the dysfunction inherent in our public discourse. Uh, However, I also believe that the ability to broadcast bad ideas or or false things far and wide to where people believe them, unsuspecting people who aren't paying attention believe them, is also a problem. And this goes to the whole discourse on misinformation. I actually think that that is a legitimate concern. What makes it difficult is that it's not always clear which case we're dealing with respect to any set of claims. Are we dealing with the case of misinformation that is potentially damaging and it could possibly spread far and wide and have negative consequences? Or are we dealing with information that is actually true, that should be spread far and wide, but also could maybe have negative consequences because people might panic, or people are going to be people. So, for example, if you have, let's say, true information about a relatively deadly disease that's spreading, and we don't have enough masks for everybody to have, or we don't have enough vaccines, or we don't have enough of whatever to ameliorate the threat, uh, it's telling everybody, even though it's true, that I have some kind of threat of causing and sparking a panic, and then all of the negative outcomes that come with that, right? So even though the information is true, there's still dangers to be considered. And no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, I think you can respect this. So if you're right of center, this kind of thing was what was cited by Trump in not uh, broadcasting the seriousness of COVID originally. The kind of explanation given was, one, he didn't want to start a panic, but two, shutting down the entire economy, particularly in election year. So there's a kind of self-servingness to that. But shutting down the economy would have had a whole bunch of dismal negative impacts on a whole bunch of people who depend on the economy to run kind of smoothly in order to make ends meet. Um, so not rushing to that political decision makes sense because of those threats. And it's a tough situation to be in, because you have to weigh, you have to do this cost benefit analysis of putting people in danger of deaths via novel disease versus putting people in dangers of having their entire livelihoods compromised. They may still be alive, but they may be very, very close to dead, to whatever extent the economy devastates their economic position in life, etc. Um, so it's kind of tough. Now, I actually have criticisms of the Trump administration because I think that there was some self-serving motivations there in terms of not looking bad for election purposes, and I don't think that that should have been a part of the cost-benefit analysis in the way that I think it probably was. But that's the kind of thing. Even when the information is true, there's still an issue. But let's say the information is false. It seems to be even more pernicious, possibly because the information being spread far and wide isn't even true, and people are acting as if it is, and that can have, there's all kind of devastating consequences there. So like, I think it's a lot tougher than just let people speak. What do you think about that?
So on your Trump point, as far as like the politicization of certain information or certain decisions, for example, I think that's something that's it's that's what politicians do. Like I don't think Trump would be immune to it. Their first priority is getting elected, just as the great Thomas Sowell said. First priority is getting elected. Second priority is getting reelected. And whatever is number three is far, far behind those things. It's
I have a
it's not
problem with that.
surprising.
I have a
It's
problem
you
with that.
have a problem with that.
Yeah, you don't
I
want. I
mean,
don't want. I don't want politicians that prioritize their election prospects over serving the people.
yeah,
It's a
but
dereliction of duty.
that's the thing. Those people, especially in our system where we have almost no term limits for most of those positions, uh, like I'm talking about Congress, for example, their first and biggest priority is to be able to continue serving in the government. It's like it doesn't really matter what your ideas are, what your intentions are, if you're outside the government.
No, I get that. There's a practical necessity to wanting to be reelected or stay in office, because if you're not in office, you can't do good for the people you're supposed to represent. So I'm not
Or
denying that that's something that you need to
your special
consider, or that.
interests.
Okay, fair enough. But that's so that's the part I disagree with, or that's the part I have a problem with, because it implies corruption, or it
Yeah.
instead it's a manifestation of corruption in our system. But what I'm saying is, I'm trying to recognize the legitimacy of, like, for practical reasons, there's a practical necessity to actually being elected, or being reelected, in order to be able to do whatever good things you want to do. I get that. But prioritizing that in principle over serving others is problematic, because, like, there's so many things that you possibly could do if you prioritize them more. But if you're very self-serving in your in trying to make sure you stay in office and you want to make a career out of politics, what happens over time, and then what happens when you multiply that over several different representatives, political representatives, is you get kind of instantiated into our system cycles of professional politicians who don't do anything
Hmm.
for the people they're supposed to represent, and that doesn't serve
Yeah.
the people. So
Yeah. But
that's the systemic outcomes, the negative
uh-huh.
systemic outcomes of this practice is what I'm criticizing.
Okay. And you kind of see it a little more on the Democratic side than you do on the Republican
Mm-mm,
side.
I don't agree with
Even
that
though
either.
you
I think
still
you see it.
no, hold
I
on a
think you
second.
see it equally
In
on both
voting
sides.
patterns, you absolutely do see it in patterns. The uniformity of the vote in Congress in on the Democratic side is greater than the uniformity of the vote on the Republican side. That is undeniable. You can look at any bill that you want. I
I,
guarantee you, you
I'm
will
not.
see.
I'm not denying that. What I was
But
denying is the idea that you see more self-serving politicians
oh
in the
no, that's
Democrat
not what I'm
Party than
talking
you see
about.
in the
That's
right.
not what I'm talking
You see
about.
in the Republican Party.
I I have no love for either one of them.
Okay.
My point is though, there are there are a certain subgroups of individuals within. It's a little bit rarer in the Democratic Party. There are some people that I have a bit of respect for, same
Mhm.
as with the Republican Party. But as far as like consistency, as far as like their messages and their morals, like the people that we look at least the ones I've seen cited the most often, and tell me if I'm wrong, or if you have someone else in mind as being people serving and based on moral and social principles are guys like Bernie and women like AOC or some of the people in the squad or whatever, in that general vicinity, the younger ones and the more democratic socialist ones, they vote the same way the neoliberal war hawks do every time. Well, you're telling me that you are the people who care about human rights. You're the people who care about social cooperation and peace. Yet you fund wars in other countries consistently, and then you're completely quiet about it. Like that. I don't see any examples of what's it called of people can being consistently themselves and following their own moral principles rather than going rather than towing the party line. I'm not seeing it. If you have examples, I would love to know. I have a personal example. Someone who I've respected for a very long time because of this, Ron
You
Paul,
want you
who
want
would
you want me to give
who
you
would
an
vote
example of a
by
morally
himself.
consistent? You want me to give you an example of a morally consistent Democrat?
I mean, or anybody else really, but out of the
That's
people that I
that's a,
can
that's a
that I
tall
can
order right there. That's a
I
tall order.
but that's what I'm saying, dude. Like the election and the support of the rest of your party
But it's
matters
also
to
difficult
them
to give
more.
example. But it's also difficult to give examples of morally consistent Republicans too.
Absolutely, and that's why I told you like there are very very few people, and one of the rare ones on both sides is Ron Paul. He used to vote alone for like 20 years. He would oppose bills by himself. Like I'm not talking about by himself on the Republican side, by himself. Period. Like no
Uh,
one else would vote the way he does.
I mean, okay. I don't hold him in that high esteem. I do like him as a politician
I mean,
relative
that's not
to
even an
a lot of
esteem
other
thing.
ones.
It's like a factual thing. Like he
I'm just
just
not
if
that
you
big
look
on
at
Ron, but I do think he's more consistent in general than most politicians. But I haven't really done a deep dive in terms of the voting records of most of these politicians. So I will be speaking in ignorance right now, and I would just be pontificating, and I don't want to do that.
yeah.
But